The Aurora Optima 997 Flex comes in an Aurora black box with the Aurora insignia on the top, and 997 and Optima Flex on the side, along with your number 72 out of 330. After taking off the top, you've got some paperwork. You fold the side of the box down to pull the inner box out. You open the clamshell inner box and the pen's inside there, along with a little wax Aurora seal and a metal emblem. The pen is wrapped in cellophane, and then underneath the pen holder is the paperwork for the warranty. I got this pen at a very reduced price. It was a pre-order, there was a sale, and then I had a coupon. I had not owned an Aurora before, and I was curious about them, and I really liked this light blue pastel color. I had not seen very many pens like that, but I had pre-ordered it back in like November, and when it finally showed up, I had seen other pastel pens, and now I have a small collection of them. Starting from the top, your number is engraved in black, 072 out of 330, and then there's a slight indentation or bevel before you get to the finial. The finial is a flat top. The end cap, or in this case the piston knob, is flat along with that same bevel, and it has silver trim. All of the trim is silver colored, including the clip. The clip kind of comes away from the body, then curves down and kind of curves out into like a blob. It kind of reminds me of like maybe a zoom nib or something. The metal cap band comes all the way down to the end of the cap. There's a Greek key fret design on the top and bottom of the band, connected by these little stripes, and then in relief the word Aurora written on the front, and Italy written on the back. This is one of the nicer cap bands I've seen. It feels very nice and sturdy and looks very luxe. Inside the cap, I couldn't find any kind of inner cap or any step down where you screw it in and the section butts up against the step down to further protect the moisture inside of the pen. Here you can clearly see the threads there where the section threads into the cap, but I couldn't find a step down or an inner cap, and consequently this pen dries out faster than a lot of my other pens. The pen opens in between a 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 turns. The pen comes in 8 colorways. This one is light blue. It also comes in blue, purple, green, yellow, gray, red, and orange. I really liked the variety of colors they offered. It is a rhodium plated 14 karat fine flex nib with a wonderful, wonderful ebonite feed. I really don't understand why all high-end pens do not come with a ebonite feed. It ought to be a law or something. You charge over $100, you must have an ebonite feed. It's very hard to see, but engraved on the side is some Italian words that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, and Aurora Italia. There's a distinct flare where the section meets the nib, and the section is fairly normal in size and ends with the threads for the cap. The threads are very smooth and really don't bother you. Then there's 2 trim rings around the ink window, and the ink window is a very effective one. You can actually tell how much ink you have in the pen. It's a piston filler, and I changed the ink several times in this pen and had no problems with that. Here is the pen unposted, and it was surprisingly well balanced and very comfortable. Here's the pen posted, and I don't normally post a pen, but it was very well balanced and not back heavy like many pens can be when you post them. It didn't come off with shaking, and it's seated very well. Capped, it's shorter and slightly girthier than the Lamy 2000, but uncapped it's exactly the same size. And the girth where you would hold the pen is approximately the same size. Capped, it's slightly longer than a Pro Gear Slim and just slightly girthier. Uncapped, it kind of dwarfs the Pro Gear Slim and the section is girthier. The nib on the Optima is also longer. Capped, it's about the same size as a full-up Pro Gear. That's probably why I like the balance of this pen so much. Uncapped, it's longer than the full-up Pro Gear, and that's what's interesting about this pen. When it's capped, it appears shorter, but uncapped, it kind of reveals a little bit longer pen. The girth around the section is about the same too. Initially, I inked it up with Maruzen Kirin ink, and it's a bit of a fussy ink. And sure enough, I left it overnight and it dried up a little bit, gave me a hard start and skipped a little bit. I normally don't hold this against the pen, and I usually try some sort of difficult ink on my first one to see how the pen handles it. And then I figured I'd use an Aurora ink, so I used their 100th anniversary blue black. That seemed to write a little bit better, but then again, I still had occasional skips on downstrokes. Here you can see the downstroke on the word opal on the O, it's missing. But I suspected that ink felt a little bit like it was waterproof. And sure enough, I dumped some water on a writing sample and it looks like it's slightly water resistant. So I used one of my secret weapons, Bungukan Kobayashi's Suruga Bay. It's a very wet ink. And it did improve my writing experience, but I still had occasional downstroke problems, maybe 1 or 2 per page. So I took the nib and the feed out and positioned the feed a little bit closer to the tip of the nib and then heat set the feed. That is the beauty of having an ebonite feed, is that you can fix these kinds of problems. And after doing that, I didn't have any problems with the pen at all. So now you're thinking, oh my God, she had to try all these different things to get the pen to work. It's a crappy pen. So we need to talk a little bit about flex. And in the end, like many things in life, it's all a trade-off. And that's why I called part of this video Chasing Flex. It's like that movie Chasing Amy, in which you've gotten a really great flex experience and then you spend the rest of your life kind of chasing that. Let's talk about your best and your most frustrating flex experience right after this ad. I am no calligrapher by any stretch of the imagination, but I think most people would agree that the best flex you're going to get is some sort of calligrapher's dip pen nib. And the nib most used to be adapted to a fountain pen is the Zebra G nib. Flexible Nib Factory makes a unit where you can use a Zebra G nib in, and then you can screw it into a variety of different pens. Each one's a different kind of unit. It's an ebonite unit with an ebonite feed, and you can just use straight up regular Zebra G nibs that you buy in a box, maybe like $2 for a box. Here you can see the tines really spread. If you have the time, you really need to go to their website and read their write-up on Zebra G Flex nibs. It's hilarious. I totally agree with them. In a box of 10 Zebra G nibs, you're going to find 2 that just won't work. And then you'll find maybe 7 that will maybe work. And amongst those, you'll get maybe 2 that'll make you feel like you're wearing blue suede shoes. They're just awesome. And then there will be one you'll want to throw across the room. I was going to try to show you a writing sample with one of these, but the nib I had in, I threw across the room. He goes so far as to rinse his nib off after every time he uses it and dries it off. I don't, and I probably only get about a week out of a Zebra nib before I have to change it out. So that's the trade-off. You'll want to throw something across the room. 2 of the nibs won't even work, and then 2 of the nibs will work so well you'll want to cry, but only for about a week. There's a variety of reasons why these nibs don't last forever. The ink's very hard on them and corrodes, and the tip gets scratchy or too pointy or digs into your paper. I think they're mass-produced and possibly cheaply made, but like I said, it's a trade-off. The next is the Blue Dew fountain pen. It gives you close to what you experience with the Zebra G nib, in that you get a lot of line variation without very much pressure on the pen. It's $100 delivered and comes with a case, and so far my nib has lasted me 6 months. I consider it a very good value, but the trade-off is that you can't use it for regular writing. It's pretty scratchy. But look at that line variation there. Then there's the Falcon nib, and it actually does normal writing very well. And it flexes quite nicely, though you need to keep it probably a little bit on the smaller side, which is actually kind of useful. But the trade-off with this pen is that you have to press kind of hard, and then you get indentations on the paper underneath the paper you're writing on. Then there's the FA nib, which just writes beautifully for about one line, and then it has ink starvation and just won't write anything. This is greatly alleviated by using Flexible Nib Factory's ebonite feed that is made specifically for this nib. Then there's this monster. It's Pen Realm's Secretary Deflex nib unit. You can see it has cutouts on the sides, and then the slit goes all the way back to the section, and there's another slit that goes perpendicular to that. The nib fits pens that can take a Yovo number 6 nib, and I consider it the best modern flex. It's not like $1 gajillion. This brute can take just about anything. Here it's using the ink Blossom Pink, and Blossom Pink's one of those very, very watery inks where the surface tension causes the ink to ball up for a while, and then when it finally breaks, it just goes blah everywhere. It's a very difficult ink for many flex nibs to handle. The trade-off on this nib is that it's just so bouncy that regular writing feels a little strange. So back to the Aurora. What kind of trade-offs am I making, and what am I gaining from it? Using a wet ink minimizes the problem of dry out because it doesn't have an inner cap lining. It has an ebonite feed, so I was able to adjust what I needed to. I've never really had a flexible nib pen where I didn't have to fiddle with it a little bit. And as you can see here, normal writing in my note taking, it works beautifully. And you can reverse write with minimal scratchiness. I don't reverse write much, but I think I remember it being the best reverse writer I've used. And with its line variation, it's probably like a semi-flex nib. So what I would use this pen for is for normal writing, and then occasionally doing a flourish like this. I think it would be too fatiguing to do nothing but flex writing. Even if you watch the video on their website, it's mainly just flourishing that they're doing with the pen. Aurora makes their own nibs, which I really appreciate. I really love the design and balance of the pen. I didn't particularly care for some of their models with the black socks and black section and kind of chunky acrylics. This nice clean look is beautiful to me. It's very different than my predominantly Asian collection. And it's a versatile pen for me in that I can use it for everyday writing, but still do a little bit of flex when I feel like it. The downside is that I need to remember to use a wet ink for dry out. all in all, I'm really enjoying this pen. And on an administrative note, Liz Colton, please contact me on my Instagram or on my email on my About page. You won the Rirakuma Kakuno. See you next week.